Hey everybody, it's Reggie with Lawyer Interviews, and today we have Christon Halkiotis from North Carolina. Hi Christon, how are you?
Hi, Reggie. Thanks for having me.
It's so good to have you, and especially this last week because you are a criminal defense attorney, correct?
That is correct.
Awesome. And how long have you been practicing?
I've been practicing for 18 years now. It's kind of feel a
Cool.
little bit old, but 18 years. I actually spent 15 years as a prosecutor, and I left the DA's office in October of 2019 to open my own criminal defense firm.
Oh my goodness. So right before the pandemic, right before all of these issues, what made you make the switch?
I think there were a number of things. I think it was time. I think that I was ready. I'd always wondered what it would be like to run a practice and run a business. And I was always a little bit hesitant because I don't have any formal business training or experience. And then I had the amazing opportunity to serve as the volunteer president and CEO of the Junior League of Greensboro. And I learned how to run a business. And I realized that lack of that sort of training up until that point shouldn't hold me back. And it gave me the confidence that I needed to go ahead and do that. And I'm so glad I did. I didn't want to get to the end of my career and look back and think, I wonder if I would have been any good at that. So I was really excited to give it a shot.
Very cool. And how was it going from a prosecuting brain to a defense brain, though? I mean, they're very different worlds. How was that, the transition?
Surprisingly, it was pretty easy. It was pretty easy because, you're dealing with the same subject matter. I spent 12 of my 15 years as a prosecutor prosecuting high-level felonies. Now I defend high-level felonies. So the content is the same. Certainly counseling clients is a wonderful addition to my practice now, working with people who are charged with very serious crimes and helping mitigate the impact of that situation in their lives. I absolutely love it. I think the one thing that's been the hardest adjustment, if you will, is the power shift. And of course, as a prosecutor, I was aware that I had a lot of power, but I'm not quite sure if I was actually aware of just how much it was until I didn't have it anymore. And I'm on the other side trying to persuade prosecutors who most of the time are my former coworkers about why this case should resolve in a particular way.
Right. I mean, I can only imagine too, making that shift in the dynamic because it is true. I mean, you walk into a courtroom and you're looking at a criminal trial. I mean, the state does have quite a bit of power in that, bringing the case. So that is an interesting take. How have you handled dealing with, your old coworkers, as a defense counsel now?
I think it's fascinating, and I'm kind of learning them for the first time because when I worked there, I'm in my own little bubble doing my own thing. I'm not concerning myself with what's going on in anybody's courtroom. So I've actually had to learn their styles. I go sit in courtrooms, watch them do trials, learn how each of them handles their cases because everybody's different. And that's certainly a job that's highly discretionary.
Right.
So learning how they handle their cases and kind of the best ways to approach each one of them, because everybody is an individual and everybody sort of has to be approached in a different way.
Right. Well, and it's probably nice too, having that rapport with them already, considering that you've worked with them or, in the same office. Do you feel like that rapport is helpful to your clients?
I do think it's helpful to my clients. And they're all good people and they're doing their job. And so I feel lucky in some ways that I'm not, you see a lot of I guess, I don't want to say complaining, but, bemoaning lawyers online, sometimes in online forums, bemoaning opposing counsel and things like that.
Right.
I'm lucky enough to get to work with people, most of whom I used to actually work with.
Right.
And now colleagues on the other side of the aisle. It's a much different experience, I think. But I think I will say I've never practiced civil law. I don't touch it with a 10-foot pole. But I think that the criminal practice in general is much more civil.
Yes, it is. It is.
Civil world.
It is.
And so I think that's probably true everywhere. And so it's luckily it's been easy in that respect.
That's good. That's good. And I will say I am one that bemoans opposing counsel, and I'm in civil litigation. And I tell you what, I bemoan all the time. So I'm a little jealous that you've got like this nice camaraderie with opposing counsel there.
I think too, part of that, no, I will just say, I think part of it, it's that underlying power balance again,
Mhm.
because in civil court, I think opposing parties, you're on equal footing.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
in criminal court, that is never the case. And so I think some of that probably has to do with it as well.
Absolutely. Well,
You can't
absolutely.
always come in and bite the hand that feeds you. So.
Absolutely. And you've got different kinds of financial situations too at play in civil litigation versus, criminal. I have another question for you. Some of our viewers might not understand what a high level felony is. So I'd love for you to kind of describe what kind of crimes would fall under that and that you help defend.
So when I say, I kind of group high level and low level felonies differently. And here in North Carolina, when I say like a high level felony, I'm referring to what we have between a class A and an E felony. An A felony in North Carolina, there's only one A felony, it's first degree murder.
Okay.
I do represent first degree murder clients. I am on the North Carolina Capital Defense roster. I take appointed cases, and all the way down to a class E. And then we have our F through I felonies, which are lower level. If you're a lower level on an F through an I, you can get probation. A class E, you can still get probation as a level 1, but punishments look a little bit different. They're a little bit longer. You have longer terms of post-release supervision, and the exposure in general is just much greater.
Right. And that's I'm sure, some of the degree of higher level felonies too. Are you dealing with a lot of repeat offenders or first time, or is it a mix?
It's a mix. It's a mix. I think I would see I have had some repeat clients. I certainly prosecuted people repeatedly sometimes when I was a DA. And so I think it just depends. But recidivism is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, again, it's a very small percentage of the population that's responsible for committing a lot of the real serious crimes. It's not, not everyone is out there running around committing horrible crimes, which I think sometimes people might think, if they read enough, if they consume enough content on social media or regular media, they might be thinking, wow, it's just people are just running around wild. That's not really the case.
Right, exactly. And I've always said, I think that criminal defense attorneys are like the protectors of the Constitution. I think I did an internship in law school with the public defender's office, and that was such an eye-opening experience for me. And I wonder, I got the question a lot, and I'm sure you do, and I'd love your answer too. You're dealing with people who are accused, of sometimes heinous crimes. How do you personally, how are you able to defend people in those kinds of situations?
I'll tell you what I tell every single one of my clients, high level felony or not. I don't care what you did. I care what the state can prove you did.
Yes.
And because the state has that burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt, which it should, when you're talking about potentially depriving people of their liberty or of their life, since we do have the death penalty in North Carolina.
Right.
And it's extremely serious. It's a very high burden, again, as it should be. But that's the thing, you think of the 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendments, and those are the amendments that I deal in every day. And those are important, and they're rights that extend to every single one of us. And, whenever I pick a jury, I almost run a little mini civics class for them.
Yes.
And kind of explaining all the rights we get from each of these 3 amendments. This is why the police can't just come barge into your house in the middle of the night without a search warrant. It's rights that protect all of us, and that if any one of us are sitting in a defendant chair, we have the right to those things.
Absolutely. I think that's such a great take. And I love that during, jury selection, you're discussing some of these things, because I think most people, in at least my experience, are very unfamiliar with how exactly the Constitution, applies to them, with the government. It's so, convoluted for most people. And of course, we're trained in it, but a lot of lay people who end up on a jury may not understand it. And so I think that's a really good idea to give them kind of a lesson, because it might help the client, especially on defense.
I picked a jury last year. I had a high level felony trial last year, picked a jury. And when I was conversing with the jurors during voir dire, I was explaining the 5th Amendment promise of due process for everyone. That's what's going on in this courtroom right now is actively, it's due process. The fact that I'm sitting here, that's the 6th Amendment right to counsel. I am the 6th Amendment.
Right.
And you are my client's 5th Amendment due process, right? And I had one juror who said, I came here she literally said this in court, I came here ready to give an excuse to get out of this, but I want to be part of that due process, right? For your, I want to be part of the system working and doing what it was designed to do. And that's to give people a fair trial.
That gave me like chills, like like the nerdy attorney in me. I'm like, that's awesome.
It gave me chills in the courtroom too. Yeah.
I want to serve on a jury. Like I always get dismissed. Like it's not even fair. I want to. Like we never get picked.
Civil lawyers. I mean, obviously, criminal lawyers wouldn't want me. Well, prosecutors wouldn't want me, but civil lawyers wouldn't want me because I'd be like, yeah, there's always insurance. You're just not allowed to hear about.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, we miss out on all the fun. We get to be on the other side of things, and not as fun. So another thing I'd like to talk to you about, it's an interesting time that you went in and switched into criminal defense because, in the US right now and the last probably, 10 years or so, we've really had an exposure and kind of an outing of a lot of racial discrimination issues that have gone on nationwide and in certain areas specifically. And now we've got all of these new technologies coming out. We kind of discussed this on the side, but some of them are now apps that allow a person who's being pulled over to be able to live stream their own, I guess, interactions with the police. And I kind of like your take on that because cell phones are kind of a new layer to defense. So I'm kind of wondering what you think. And same with body cam footage. What do you think about the new technology coming out as far as defending and how that assists you?
I think that, all video is helpful. And I think it's helpful on both sides. If I were a prosecutor still, and there's something that doesn't match up. I mean, when I was a prosecutor, I've had to call police out about stuff that's not lining up on body worn camera.
Right.
And things that make me I'm not happy with. I've had to do that before. As a defense attorney, of course, it's also helpful because a lot of times you'll find stuff on body cam and it's like, oh, that's funny because the police report says something completely different.
Right.
And I think, I've seen plenty of sort of lay people who have recorded their own encounters with law enforcement. And it's brought some stunning things to light. And I think, again, it's important to remember it's not that these things just started happening. It's just that now we've started having the capability where everybody's walking around with a video camera on them, which is an amazing thing. And so it's not that this has never been happening. It's just that people haven't had a way to preserve it and to show and to exonerate themselves. And so I think it's great. I think that probably want to make sure you have some sort of, dashboard mount that you can put your camera, your phone in to make sure you're not then getting charged with, holding a phone if you live in a jurisdiction where you're not allowed, you're hands-free only, things like that. But I've seen a couple actually in the last year or two here in our county, some encounters with the police that went pretty badly. That were recorded by citizens who just turned their phones on.
Right. I mean, and I mean, obviously this is not legal advice. I mean, would you advise clients though, in a normal situation to always record, or just depending on, I guess, the severity, or, I mean, what would you advise people? Turn it on?
Everybody's different. If you want to, I don't think there's any harm in it whatsoever. And it could potentially help you. Certainly there are people who just by virtue of who they are feel more vulnerable in situations where they're getting pulled over by law enforcement. I think some people, regardless also of who they are, may not feel comfortable turning a camera on. And I think that's okay. I think so whatever an individual's personal comfort level is, I'd say, go with that. And there's also, now I know in our jurisdiction now, pretty much every law enforcement agency, our two largest city police departments, our county sheriff's office, have body worn camera, dash cam and body worn camera. Our state highway patrol still here in North Carolina does not use body worn camera. They have dash cams, but they do not use body worn camera. And one of our large police departments, literally just got body worn. I think everybody got the capability last year, but one other agency has been using it for years now. So it kind of depends, but I think now everybody's sort of, aligning with body worn camera and it just being kind of a reality of where we are and where we're going. But again, I think it can be helpful on both sides. And I think one of the hangups too, as a prosecutor, you've got now jurors are expecting that.
Really? Okay.
And so it can be something to pounce on if you have a situation where somebody didn't turn a body worn camera on.
Right.
That's certainly something to pounce on as a defense attorney. So,
Right.
what aren't they wanting us to see? Like, why don't we have video footage of that?
Right.
And it's something that, as a prosecutor, you've got to explain.
Right. I mean, that's why it's so interesting too, that, we are in a world of technology, and you've got both like the live stream apps now where you can live stream your, getting pulled over, your interaction with the cops, but also like a physical recording that's stored on your like hard device. So it's interesting, like the different kinds of platforms that these can be uploaded to, and they may be out there before it even gets to a juror, or a jury. So with like high level, high profile stuff, does that ever create an issue, you think, for either defense or prosecution if it gets out there before the trial?
I think it potentially can.
Mhm.
It potentially can. I don't, and I'm not really sure that. I guess it's more of just an individual call. I'm not really sure, that it's blanketly advantageous to put it out there beforehand.
Right. Right. Yeah,
So,
it's interesting. I'm kind of watching this new technology come out, and I want to see how it kind of unfolds and is used. But the live stream one is very interesting. I mean, we've had like Facebook Live or Instagram Live, or for a while, but now the app's dedicated specifically to this. It's going to be an interesting thing to watch, I think. So
it definitely will. Yeah, I'm excited to see where that goes.
Well, and I'm so excited also to talk to you this week because there was a topic that we couldn't have planned for. We already had this scheduled, but it really falls up your area of expertise. But the Oscars happened Sunday, and there was a slap seen and heard around the world between Will Smith, who went up on stage and slapped Chris Rock after Chris Rock made some, comment or joke about Will Smith's wife, Jada Pinkett Smith. So I'd love your take on the whole situation and your thoughts as a defense attorney and as an attorney in general.
So there's some things that first come to mind as a defense attorney. I think the first thing that went through my head was, whoa, don't commit crimes on camera.
Yes.
Don't do that. That's my number one caveat as a defense attorney. Don't commit crimes on camera.
And he had like lots of cameras on him. So
yeah, like
not just one, like hundreds.
On live television. Don't commit crimes on live television. It's literally being broadcast around the world.
Right.
And then when I sat with it for a little while and reflected, I think where it just sort of hurts my soul is that I represent adults. I also represent juveniles. And a lot of the people that I represent don't look like me. Mm-hmm. And I see a disproportionate amount of people in our criminal justice system who don't look like me. And a lot of them are being prosecuted right now for less than what Will Smith did.
Right.
And it makes me very worried that there are impressionable youth. I do represent juveniles as well, that there are impressionable youth who see that. And then when they go do that, they're going to get prosecuted for it. They're going to get arrested. They're going to get prosecuted. They're going to be put into the system. And that hurts my heart. And I wish that hadn't been out there, I mean, and I'm not going to say go like, I'm not going to say, go hit someone. But
right.
If you have the need to work something out with someone after you've been offended, I don't know, maybe do it in the back room when there's no cameras going.
Right.
Maybe handle your business privately.
Right.
I hate what that puts out there to youth who are impressionable as we're trying to get youth to curb this violence that we see day in and day out in our communities. Nothing's going to happen to Will Smith.
No, very different result in Hollywood versus anywhere else, right?
Exactly. And that's what I worry about. It just makes me sad.
Right.
Because I see so much of that. Right.
Well, and it also brings up kind of an interesting topic too regarding, I mean, and I know it's not like the state or anything, but like, we talk about freedom of speech and, comedy obviously has been protected for a very long time. You think of like the George Carlin case, the real, the one with all the fun words in it from back in law school, and, looking at comedy and where people make jokes. I mean, and, just the question, that I've heard people, does anything ever justify an act of violence like that, a joke or anything? My answer is no, but I'm kind of wondering your take on that too.
Definitely that threshold was not met the other night.
Right, right.
I think in certain situations where words have the potential to immediately incite violence of some sort, that was not what we saw. That was not what we saw. Those were words. They may have been rude. Mm-hmm. They may have been offensive, but those words were not grounds to haul off and strike someone.
Right, right. And I agree with you. And it's been interesting watching the commentators, people going, well, he insulted his woman, his wife, love of his life. And, and I agree with you too. It would have been something I would have handled probably privately and not in that moment. But, it is, like you said, it's a different situation. In a normal situation, Will Smith would have been, hauled off in handcuffs, possibly. And, he got to stay at the award show. He got an Oscar. He was allowed to give a speech, no real repercussion. Like anyone else would not have that result. So it is kind of bad.
And I definitely, I would tell people, I obviously can't get inside your head. I can't feel the degree to which you were offended. But what I can tell you is from a legal standpoint, if we're in court, the fact that this person said something insulting to your wife, that's not going to be a legal defense for us.
Right. Exactly. Well, it's such a fun, thing when crim law gets into Hollywood. And, I didn't watch the Oscars, but I saw all of the go down the next day. I was like, wait, what happened? Was this a joke? Is this was it staged? And then I was like, no, that's real. Holy cow. It's a wild time in 2022. Well, it's been so great talking to you, Christon. And it's very, very, very informative, hearing about your transition from prosecution to defense. And I kind of wonder, do you have any great stories from either your prosecuting days or defense days that you wouldn't mind sharing with us, about a fun case or a successful case or client?
Gosh, there's so many. And it's hard for me just to think of one all off the top of my head. It's amazing. There's never a dull moment. It's not like, oh, you've got one good story for the year. It's right. A few stories a week. And it's incredibly exciting. There's never a dull moment. And the way that I get to help people and impact their lives is amazing.
Very cool. Well, and how has social media been, with, people reaching out? Do you do a lot of advertising on social media with clients? Do you find a lot of clients that way? Or what is your main, source of advertisement?
Definitely social media. I'm incredibly active on Instagram. I've been pretty active on LinkedIn over the pandemic. I actually linked up with about 20 other female attorneys from around the country. We wrote a book during the pandemic in 2020.
Well, let's hear about this. I want to hear about this.
Yeah, it's called Networked, and it's available on Amazon. All the proceeds go to charity. We vote on a charity every year, and everything goes to charity. Last year it was the National Women's Law Center. Awesome. And it was just really fantastic. It was kind of, when the word of the year was pivot, it was about how we pivoted during the pandemic and kind of, I was 5 months into my law practice when the pandemic kind of hit. And a lot of my work luckily didn't get shut down because, with constitutional considerations, you can't put criminal stuff on Zoom. Right. And so it's been neat. I do a lot of advertising on Instagram. And I've really embraced that. I enjoy it. I mean, it's free. I think anybody who's not using Instagram for advertising has missed the boat entirely. You just have to get past that mindset of, oh gosh, I wonder what people might think if I post this. And, as long as you're not hurting anybody or violating ethical rules, go for it. Because when you put down the weight of worrying about what other people are thinking, if they're going to talk junk about you, they're going to do it regardless of whether you're posting, whether you're not posting, regardless of what you're posting. Right. And so it's been wonderful, and it's been great for business. I get a lot of business off of Instagram, mostly attorney referrals, surprisingly. I have had some direct clients who found me on Instagram, but a lot of attorneys. And so it's so much fun, and I love content creation. I actually have an account for my corgi. He has like 45,000 followers, so he's cooler than I will ever be.
Oh, cool.
But content creation has always been really fun for me. And now that I have my own firm doing content creation, if I hate stock photos, and there's so much value in an Instagram account where you're posting yourself and you're able to showcase yourself. And in my practice area too, I think criminal defense is a very personal experience with a client. When someone comes to hire you, they don't want to get pawned off on an associate.
Right.
They want you representing them in court because they like your style, they like your presence, all of that. And you can showcase so much about yourself on social media. And I've just had so much fun with it. So I'm glad you asked about that.
Oh, I love that. And I'm so excited. I'm glad that you were able to plug that book. That sounds such like a cool idea. Anyway, and I'll also go girls. I love that. So everyone check it out. And I would love you to also throw up your handles and your corgi's handle, because I'm going to definitely go follow your corgi. So I love corgis. Like the queen loves corgis. I love corgis. So I'd love you to throw up your handles so that everyone can follow you and hear more about your firm, but also, this book, which I think is fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Perfect. So what are your handles? Sorry, if you don't mind.
Sure. So my firm is CSH Law PLLC.
Okay.
My dog's handle is Churchilly, CHURCHILLY. And we actually Networked Book is our Instagram handle for the book. So you can learn about it, find it on Amazon, all that good stuff.
Perfect. We'll throw those handles up too in post editing and let everyone see those so that they can click on them. So thank you again, Christon. It's been so great talking to you. And thanks for joining us today for Lawyer Interviews.
Thanks so much, Reggie. I appreciate it.
Thanks. And everyone, thanks for watching and stay tuned for next week. Bye.